we've divided all the students at the high school into different groups, 4 groups to be exact, with each one having their alphabet, much like the counselors do. So the case managers will be responsible for a small group of students that they will then follow through from the beginning, creating their data files, sending the letter home, meeting with a parent, making the house visit if necessary. If they don't stop being absent, then the case manager will assign and monitor the interventions. We want to start makeup hours right after the 3rd absence and not go any further, not delay it until they've lost credit, rather start up front, and then work closely with not only the parent but also the student's counselor and the principal, basically taking the student by the hand and taking them to the counselor, not scheduling an appointment, rather take them to the counselor, sit with them while the counselor does their conversation, their counseling, and then when that doesn't work, then again take them to the principal and sit down with, I say principal, but I mean the assigned administrator, to then follow the next procedure and on with a contract. So having a case manager, much like a social worker, assigned to students, and not where you have one for the high school, rather one for a smaller group of students. That does require reassigning some I guess, priorities to what's already existing in the job description of each of the people that we're using. But I really think that as I've looked and visited with different principal friends of mine, they're really not doing anything different. The people that have better results are the ones that are having that one-to-one relationship with the student. And the people that we've assigned and working with Dr. Barrera, Patty McNamara, and Rudy Valdez meets this requirement. Now, because it was a lot of work, we've done this through the freshman campus, 9th through 12th. We've taken our new principal and talked to him exactly about what's expected. We think it's going to be very successful, but it just takes redirecting some job descriptions, and that's what she's going to talk to us next. If y'all have any questions after she's done or in the middle, we'll be glad to answer.
And just like Dr. Rios said about the case managers, not so much that it's going to be so much different than what we did last year, but more of a systematic approach, and that way we don't drop any of those referrals, or it doesn't get caught up with the paperwork.
I'm sorry, one big part I forgot. Because we anticipate that initially there would be larger number of students referred to court, we've met with Judge Cole on 3 different occasions. We've shared with her our process to make sure that we can implement this. She has committed to hearing the cases. As long as we file them within 10 days of the student having the 10th absence, she's also committed to hearing the case within 10 days so that we expedite it. I think that working collaboratively will certainly improve the attendance with the students that have been abusing it.
Exactly. So you look at the attendance case management system, and that's what Mr. Valdez passed out to you. And so there's going to be some systems there. The lead truancy clerk, who will be working closely with the case managers who are going to be working with our students by Alpha. And then also we have our case managers that are going to be very instrumental. 3 of them will specifically be working with 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, right, having to do with the Alpha. And then the 4th one will be working primarily with our ACAP students, which are our 5th year students trying to graduate, or our students that are 18 and older. And then also with the counselor piece being involved as well by the Alpha, our attendance officer or the assistant principal or the principal as well. We will have an assistant principal who will be overseeing the process, but all of the assistant principals at high school and at the freshman campus will be involved with that Alpha as well. And then our district truancy officer. And that is where the district truancy officer will actually be at our campus and then also actually meet with the different people in this process to make sure that we have everything lined up, to make sure that we've had substantial interventions. So again, every situation might be different for, different students depending on maybe what their home life or maybe their history for poor attendance, but again, to have that combination and also have everything lined up.
If I may add, Ms. Gerby and board members, one of the things that we learned in the customer service training that we did with the bank and trust was that there shouldn't be a paper that passes through more than 2 hands before it gets to where it needs to get to. So having the district's truancy officer there at the high school, rather than go through the assistant principal and through the counselor and through the teacher, it goes directly from the case manager to the district truancy officer who's gonna file the truancy. That way there's no time lag or loss in between, but just rather a more efficient system.
And a lot also with the collaboration, we had originally done this also just by grade level. And then what happens is that you just have a lot of people kind of repeating the process, but unfortunately it gets lost. And so even though I might be on duty trying to look for certain students or going through certain hallways, we felt like if we had a certain alpha assigned to us as well, we could keep a better handle of it also. Right away when we start seeing those patterns, we have a copy of their schedule as well. We can also tie it into our walkthroughs, going into certain classrooms to make sure that that child is there when we've already had that conversation with them, or the counselor has, or the parental aide also. The attendance case management system, having to deal with step one, she will have, or he will have, this person will have daily communication with the case managers. There will be a generated report, and as soon as we have the 3 absences that are hit, right there, that would start off the referral process. In the past, we would wait for a referral to be initiated by the teacher, and so sometimes you have the teachers that do an excellent job, sometimes they get caught up as well. So again, there's going to be an automatic trigger there so that the case manager and the lead truancy clerk are working with that. A folder is initiated. And again, like Dr. Rios also talked about it, having the different steps with the interventions, not just passing the folder, but actually talking to the counselor saying, when's a good time for this child to see you or these children to see you, that child actually being brought in maybe during, after their lunch period and so forth, so that we're not pulling them out of the instructional day. And again, to reconcile individual office sign-in sheets, we did, I think, improve a lot this year compared to last year, but we still can do a better job with that, just to make sure that if our kids are somewhere else in the school, we're actually cognizant of that. If they're in the nurse's office, in the library, and so forth. So that's one thing that the lead truancy clerk will do as well. Step 2, the case managers. There's 6 personnel assigned into grades 9 through 12. In your little packet, Mr. Valdez also included a flow chart. And we'll also ensure, the case managers will ensure that every aspect of the attendance improvement efforts are implemented. And again, going back and forth, it might not be the same exact way for everybody, because let's say it's a student that is homeless, or let's say a student that isn't coming to school for a different reason compared to another one. Maybe the home visit might go quicker than for another student. Duties, 3 unexcused absences would trigger the attendance referral, as mentioned before. Meet with the student, contact the parent, and send home the notification of attendance letter. Create a documentation folder. Again, we'll have a folder, a green folder right away, because we want to have a good, attendance. We're going to go with green, because that's what we want to go for and lean towards. Accompany the student with 4 absences to the assigned counselor, and then also accompany the district truancy officer to all court appearances. So again, instead of having one individual trying to present different cases, it'll actually be the case manager who has dealt primarily with that student with attendance issues. Step 3, the case manager will accompany the student to the assigned counselor. And again, just so that way we can make sure that that intervention is followed through. Review grades and attendance with the students on the 4th absence. And then the counselor will already assign makeup hours instead of waiting until the end of the semester, which we usually do. Or assign tutorials, follow up with it, make sure that they're actually attending tutorials. See if there's makeup work that he or she is missing, or, with the assigned detention that he or she may receive also. Step 4, the case manager will accompany the student to an appointment with the attendance officer or the assistant principal or the principal. And again, depending if they've reached already the 5 absences, because again, we want to make sure we have all our interventions done before the 10th absence. Set up another parent-student conference when student reaches the 6th absence, and also develop an attendance contract for students who reach the 7th to the 9th absence. That would be the 6th intervention. Step number 5, case manager will submit the court packet to the district truancy officer, who would be assigned to the campus at least for half a day, review all paperwork to make sure that all the documents are in order, also file the court complaint cases on Friday so that everything can, be maybe documented by the following Monday. And then also ensure that the case manager and a campus professional are present at all court proceedings. And that's just coordinating our schedules and just make sure that whichever administrator is assigned to that specific student or students is present. Go ahead, Dr. Rios.
Again, thanks Judge Pat Cole for being here. We think that initially it might be more cases heard, but she's agreed to do it. And what we're looking for in the future, and therefore just to expedite the process, is either working with Judge Cole or working with a judge to have the court be heard at the high school. Now, that's something new for the community, so we have to work on it, and it might take some time to establish. But just to be more efficient in how we do everything, that would definitely be the next step. But I think that where we are right now, implementing the systematic case management process, which, by the way, is what the state outlined probably going back 4 years, and they specifically use that language, case management process. We think that we're going to see some immediate results, again, to address the students that have just taken advantage. Because if we look at the greatest hit to our attendance, yes, it does hurt when you have a student that's been absent 20, 30 times, but it's the frequent flyers that just hit you 2 or 3 days at a time, because there's so many of them. There's 700 and whatever the number was we put up there. That makes a significant difference, and those are the students that are going to have the largest effect on improving our attendance. So hats off to everybody that worked on this. I think that we're going to see some benefit. We just have to be consistent in how we implement that, and we've had a lot of conversations about that.
And we've also talked to the students on the superintendent's management team, or, the committee, to try to get feedback from them on what would encourage them to be at school, what kind of incentives they'd like and so forth. And we've visited with them about that as well. They've given us some good feedback too.
At the freshman level, not only are we going to mirror this initiative exactly as Dr. Barrera has laid it out, but our hope is not only to improve our attendance, but also curtail some of those negative attendance behaviors, so that when they transition to the high school, it's already been handled. So hopefully we'll see an improvement not only in this initial year, but in years to come.
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Mesa has a question.
I just want to thank everyone involved with this plan. I think it's something that, improves our attendance, and I want to thank also Judge Cole for being here. Just one concern that I wish, I think Dr. Barrera knows very well, the feeder schools, 7th and 8th grade, because this is where, normally, historically, the attendance problem starts down below.
Yes.
Elementary, they establish a pattern, but my concern is, the 7th and 8th grade students that maybe not this coming year, but hopefully in the future that we can extend it, because I know that creates a problem at freshman school. They're there and they don't have enough credits to move on, and as a result they get older and they start causing the discipline problems. So hopefully something could be addressed at 7th and 8th grade that's similar to this.
And that's what the plan is, right, Dr. Rios?
Yes, we just think that initially it's going to be a big hit to the whole process, and we want to see how we can handle it and make sure that we do things.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa.
Mr. Chavita has a question or comment.
A comment on it, because 728, it's a bunch of them. What's going to happen when you have 100 reaching 5 absences at one time? How are you going to be able to see them throughout the day, or how do you plan doing that?
And I think that's where we had to look at our plan, because we thought at first, initially, that maybe it would help, like if we only had one counselor assigned and then one administrator. Well, that's not feasible, because all of us have to get to walkthroughs. All of us have to be on lunch duty. So we're gonna have to make it happen. And the point is we have to maximize it while they're there to give them the interventions. And so that's what the plan is.
That's what I was alluding to. The other question was, is there any way, because Mr. Mesa was saying, and it's a trend, the same people that are absent, if you were to see, if you were to identify, you know, the guys that have the most absences and try to consult with them, in other words, prevent it rather than wait until they have 5 or 6 absences. You know who the people that are going to be absent. I remember when I was at the 8th grade, we had kids that were absent 100 times, and we made it a point that we got, you know, we identified, 20, 25 of them, and we talked to them, the worst ones.
Exactly.
And maybe you can do something like that, because it's better to prevent it. Once they get on it, it just, well, I've been absent, just like, you know, after you get so many of them, they'll start giving up on themselves, and they'll continue to be worse off. So
And that's what
I
we
think
did
that
last.
if we try to prevent it and try to find out, see who those guys that develop a habit of being absent, and maybe we can counsel, give them ways of them to improve their absences, such as do whatever needs to be done in the summer or weekends, that type of thing. Because once you get them out to be 10 absences, you're going to be continue. You kind of lose them.
Exactly, and that's what we did last year. We came up with a list. We already had a list for the kids that were freshmen and had poor attendance. We started talking to them, right at the beginning of the school year. But again, it's important for us just to collaboratively work together, just to remember that we have that, when they hit the 10 days, we have to file by, in that 10, on the 10th day and do it, because you have in a 6-month period that they're absent 10 times, or if they're absent 3 times in a 4-week period. And so, and just to collaboratively work with that, because again, like Dr. Rio said and Mr. Mesa, it didn't just start happening at the high school. These kids have had attendance issues since they were very young.
Actually, also maybe the newspaper can help us out and tell them that what we're going to do, and maybe we can reach the parents, because let's face it, those are the ones that are going to be right there on hand and try to help us out, because we need the help from the parents.
Exactly.
They need to send them home, and if they start knowing that this is going to happen to them, especially when it's going to hurt their pockets too, we need to let them know.
Thank you, Mr. Trevino.
Again, I certainly want to thank Judge Cole for her involvement in this. We appreciate your support. Judge Cole, do you have anything to add or to say?
The only thing that I would really like to say is that I have not had the opportunity to see a truancy prevention program. This is the first time I've seen one, and I'm very impressed. I think this is what the state is after. They tell us that we have to have one, but they don't tell us exactly what they want. But I think this is a great program.
Any other questions for Judge Cole? Any questions? Yes, Ms.
I just have one question. First of all, thank you, Sally. I know you've taken a lot of heat, especially from the board members regarding the attendance issues there at the high school. So I definitely do appreciate, as Mr. Mesa just said, the work that you've put towards putting together a prevention program like Judge Cole just mentioned. I do hope that it's successful. I do hope that we stick to it and that we're consistent. Going from 70 cases or so to who knows how many will be needed, and maybe not 728 will be needed, because you're going to be meeting these kids at the 3rd absence, at the 4th absence, and they're gonna get sick of you and hopefully quit calling in. I mean, not calling in, quit not showing up. So hopefully you won't be inundated, Judge Cole, with 728 cases, because I don't know how you would manage that within the 10 days. But thank you for working with us and partnering with us, Judge Cole, and making sure that we're helping these kids be successful. Thank you.
Anything else on this item?
I would just like to make one comment that I sincerely appreciate the meetings that you've
Thank you. We through with this item? Thank you.
You.
Okay, so that brings us to agenda item 7B. Remember, we jumped ahead one. Agenda item 7B is accountability and improvement plan, which is co-presented by Dr. Jorge Garza and Aide Garcia, Chief Instructional Officers for secondary and elementary respectively. Dr. Garza?
Thank you, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, members of the board. We will be discussing the accountability intervention plan today. I will handle the data analysis, and then Mrs. Garcia will talk about the intervention plan. First thing I would like to talk about is the new state accountability. This started last year. It was a little bit complicated. We are understanding it a little bit more, yet we need to dig in a little bit more to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on and why our schools are not being as successful as we want them. The Index 1 is a performance where it measures all the students, all the subpopulations, all the kids, for all the subjects. It doesn't vary. There is no specific situation that they talk about. It's all the kids. Index 2 is a little bit more difficult. This is the one that measures the growth, the progress, from one year to another. A student at 3rd grade going to 4th grade or 5th to 6th, whatever it is growth. Index 3 is closing the performance gap. That's also a little bit challenging, but I think we've got a handle on it. It measures several populations with the economically disadvantaged kids. And then Index 4 is college readiness. This year, they measured something else for all the schools, including the high school. It goes from elementary all the way to high school, and it's called post-secondary readiness, which is measured by the final standard that the state is recommending. And at the high school, they still have the graduation plan and also the graduation rate, and I believe attendance too. There's 2 ways that they measure it, even though it says three labels that they give every school, every district. One of them is met standards, and the other one is improvement required. The third one, we don't have a school like that in the alternative program. So we only have 2 labels, met or improved. The performance index framework considers the results from, like I said earlier, the STAR testing, graduation rates, rates of student completed recommended and distinguished programs. And here's our data for the school year of 2014. There is 48 different boxes there that are measured by the state, and 8 of them we did not do well. We did not meet requirements, which indicates that 4 of the schools will be labeled required improvement. On top, you'll see the indexes, Index 1, Index 2, Index 3, and Index 4. On Index 1, it gives you a number right below the white column on Index 1. It's 55. That should be the score in the standard for Index 1. In Index 2, it says the 5th percentile. The state gets the comparable schools, and they tell us what it's going to be. And you'll see the number right next to, there's 2 columns on Index 2. The first column, it shows 33. That's the number that the state has given us for the elementaries. And then it gives us 28 for middle school. And high school is not evaluated in this index because they do not have any tests that are measured for growth. I'll remind you that at the high school now there's only 5 EOCs, so there's not a test at 8th grade that shows growth for high school. That's why they're not measured. In Index 3, this is the achievement gap. Once again, the state says that the 5th percentile will be in improvement required, and they also gave us the scores right there. There's 28 in elementary and elementary, and at middle school is 27, and at high school is 31, and the state is 28. And then Index 4, once again, they give us the scores. Elementary is 12, at the middle school is 13, and at high school and freshman is, at freshman is 21, and at high school is 57. By looking at those numbers, the ones in pink in index 1, you'll see that Calderon did not meet index 1. It was 55, they scored a 50. And also index 3, it was 28, they scored 27. At Lamar, it was 55, they
Okay,
scored
but can you slow down? Do you have a, what do you call that thing with the mouse?
a mouse.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm sorry.
yeah,
50,
just, yeah, thanks,
27, sorry.
okay.
At Lamar, once again, 47. It was supposed to be 55. Oops. At index 3, I'm sorry, index 2, they scored an 18. It was supposed to be 33. And index 3, they scored 24. It was supposed to be 28. At North Heights, they met index 1. They did not meet index 2 at 31. And we also did not meet index 3 at 27.
Like 2 points and 1 point respectively, right? Or am I reading it wrong?
Yes, sir. 1 point.
Remember, I can't see.
And here's what we have managed to study the data a little bit more, and I'll show you what I mean by looking at San Felipe Memorial. This is heartbreaking for the staff because index 1, you'll see here, they have 71 points. They're the school that had the biggest gains in the district. Yet, they're gonna be an improvement required because of index 2. Oops, I lost the cursor. Okay. Index 2, they missed it by 1 point. And that is growth. That is extremely difficult. And
Okay.
as we go
Can you-
along,
can
I'll
you-
show you some graphs that will tell you why this happened.
Okay, and go back to the first column, you said, what was the first column you said? Not growth, but what was the other one? Are they measured?
Index 1 is performance.
Okay, but you said about the improvement they made from one year to the next?
Index 2 is growth, progress. It's from one grade, the student, from one grade to the next. Not
That's what
necessarily.
they measure,
not
that's what they measure AYP, right?
That's it, sir.
Okay.
Did you have a question, Mr. Gabriel?
No, I think I'll hold off for now.
Okay. Do you mind if I go up there?
Yes, we
Share a
do.
video?
I don't, I mean, it's fine with me.
Okay, on this graph here, or this slide, you'll see some tables here, and I just need to explain to you, I'm just gonna talk about the reading. This is San Felipe Memorial, reading and math, but I'm just gonna talk about reading so that you can understand what we're looking at. Dr. Rios and I were having a discussion, and we could not understand how we were gonna be improvement required in middle school, 6th grade, because they had the biggest gains, and we had these conversations of what happened. So index 2 is the one that got us, which is the growth. If you look at, this is statistics, and the mode and the median doesn't really mean much to me right now. It's really the mean. This is all the students that were at 6th grade this year. These are the same students at 5th grade, whatever elementary they were at. You'll see here that the mean is 1566 this year, and last year that same group had 1544. So there is a growth. And that's the growth that the school had, which is very significant because that's the best growth that any of the schools had. Yet we were in trouble. Here, it'll show you the difference between this one and this one. And I'm talking 650 students. I'm not talking one student. I just subtracted one scale score this year from last year's scale score, and I wanted an average. This is how much gain, mean average gain, the students had. Okay? Any questions on that? Then I wanted to see, of all the students, the 600 students, how many gains they had. Well, 480 students had gains from last year in scale points. In other words, if I scored 1,500 last year, and this year I scored, I'll try to add 185.
1685.
1685, that's the average right there. But I average all of them. That means that I had 480 gains from last year to this year. That doesn't mean that I had growth. I'm going to show you another graph here in a little bit. That just means that I had gains. That's pretty significant, though. It's real good. Then Dr. Rios asked me, well, compare just the failures. See what happened with just the failures. So that's this graph right here, or this table right here. You can see that the mean is 1432 this year, and last year those same students had an average of 1451. So they went down. That group of students that just failed this year went down, which is very significant to the principals, to the teachers, because we need to understand what happened with those kids. Mr. Limon next year needs to understand who those kids are so that this doesn't happen again. And once again, the negative 19 is the average of the subtraction of those two. Okay? And the gains there, it's logical that it's going to be less gains than gains. Okay, there's 67 gains and then 103 that did not gain. But just to make sure that you understand before we go to the next graph, that doesn't mean that they grew. That just means that they had a better score than last year. Okay? Go to the next one. Then we wanted to know on a different school that met index 2 but did not meet index 1, which is Calderon Elementary. And same thing there. The average mean this year was 1493, and last year those same kids at 4th grade was 1496. They went down 3 scale points. Yet they had gains, 75 and 19. And in this school, they met index 2, which is the growth. So that is significant there. They grew. And then I wanted to know how the failures did. And if you notice, the mean is 1352. And last year was 1313. Just so that I can tell you what that means. Even though they failed, they still grew. So that means that they met index 2. And Calderon did meet index 2. So that's the difference between those two schools. Any questions on those two tables?
I'll just point something out, Mr. Garbini. The summary of all of it was that San Felipe Memorial Middle School went up in the number of passers, but the students that failed, they actually did worse. Whereas at Calderon, everybody went up, everybody made improvement. We just didn't have enough people, enough students make enough improvement to pass so that they would have been fine. So each school showed some strength, and it also shows us where we missed the boat in certain parts of each campus with a new accountability system.
Okay. This chart, standard deviation, I'm not going to get into statistics here, but for education, instruction, and standard deviations, you want that standard deviation or that curve to be small, which means that all our teachers are doing the same thing, and all our teachers are teaching the same way. Whatever they're planning in their planning protocol is being delivered the same way. And that's what this is showing. This is just an example. It's not really our standard deviation. I'm just showing you that if all our teachers were doing this and they were falling right here, that would be good. The tighter the curve is, the better it is for us to know that they're doing well. So I wanted to see, and these tables right here are the same tables that you saw earlier. Gives you the mean, gives you the standard deviation, and same thing for last year. Now this chart here is actually not growth. This is actually showing you what happened last year and what happened this year, okay? It's not the students. I'm going to get to the students here in a little bit, but this one is just what happened this year in comparison to last year, the instruction-wise. And if you see, this is every point here are all our students. There's 600 of them. This is what it shows. It's in sequential order from lowest to highest. This right here is actually the standard deviation. And if you notice here, this standard deviation is smaller than this one. And once again, this is San Felipe Memorial. They did better this year in comparison to last year, which were their gains. But what's significant here for Mr. Ramos is saying, at planning protocol, something good is happening, because our teachers are doing the same thing, they're delivering the same instruction, so the instruction was good, the delivery of it. Yeah, we need to pay attention to that growth. Any questions here? So once again, what I really want to emphasize here, the smaller the standard deviation, the better it is for that campus, because that means that the teachers are doing well. That information is extremely vital. They might not explain it like that to the teachers, because I don't want to get confused, but I think this is significant information for them. Go to the next one. Okay, this is the same chart as the one right before it. It's just showing you, this is how we scored this year. This is how we scored last year. Okay, the brown, I think it's brown, is this year, the blue is last year. The red line right here is showing you what the scale score was, and I think that was 1592. It's the same chart that's showing you up there what they failed on, which is index 2, the growth 1 point. Go next. This is the one that's significant for index 2. What you see here is, once again, last year. This is last year. That orange line is last year. Now, these lines right here are the actual scores from last year. Okay? And each line, each dot, that dot corresponds to that dot. That dot corresponds to that dot, that one to that one, and so on and so forth. It's each student. Every student score is right here. And what I want Mr. Ramos and for everyone to understand is this is why we did not meet index 2. Because if I was the student last year, this is how I scored last year. But this is how I scored this year. Meaning that I did worse than last year. Yet, I could be this student here, or this student, last year. Yet, I did not have any growth either. Or I could go over here and I could be this student at this point. And this year, I scored right here. So the gap between both last year's scores and this year's scores is not good enough, because they should be 47 skill points higher than last year. So if you see that chart, and just by looking at it, and if you see that orange line, the numbers that are the blue lines that are the blue points that are above that line did not do well. That's the reason that we did not meet index 2. Yes, ma'am.
So, having said all that, who and what will be the plan to target the students who didn't make that progress? Of course, they're now in 7th grade.
Right. But Mr. Ramos is going to get this data, and he's also going to get the data of all the students, how they scored in 5th grade, to make sure that we know that those students need to score 47 points. Not only him, but the teachers. And it takes a little bit more than just interventions, which is good, because each student, if they scored low, and I need them to score 47 more points, well, definitely there's going to be intensive interventions for that student. You're going to identify them quickly, and you're going to put them in some kind of intervention throughout the day. If not today, every other day, every Saturday, but it has to be constructive. That's one. Sorry.
How many students did not make progress?
On that one, I would have to go back to my chart. On that one, there's going to be about 400 students, no, I'm sorry, there's going to be about 370 students that did not grow at middle school.
That's a high percentage.
It is.
So you're going to you've identified,
Now,
you
that's
already
not-
know.
That's,
Go ahead.
There's 370 students that didn't make that growth beyond what's normal growth in 1 year. It's not 370 students that failed.
No, I know.
students that we didn't add value to.
Right, they didn't make that progress,
Right.
which was anticipated, expected, and
So even though they
especially
might
in
have
that
grown,
campus,
they
did
still
well.
might have failed too?
They-
No,
they-
no,
they-
let me show you by this chart. Any student that's above this line here, all these students
They did well.
pass, all of them. So that's what we were focusing on, and that's what we're gonna focus on this coming year. But it's these students that cost us not to do well in index two. Now, going back to your question, one, identify the kids, two, make sure that we can provide intensive interventions, but three, the most important one is make sure that we work extremely hard during those planning protocols in both science and math, because that's all they're measuring, and making sure that they understand how important it is to deliver instruction where the student is not only doing drill and kill, but
In the next slides, if you made, when we get to this part of the presentation, she's gonna talk a little bit about the RTI model, and that's where we start to address, these particular students.
this is Calderon Elementary. It's the same thing here. This is last year, this is this year, but let's go to the next slide because it shows you a little bit better. Now, Calderon Elementary did not meet index one, which is performance. And you can tell here that this is this year, they're below last year. And you can tell that by using that line, you see how many students are below that line, and it's easy to see why they did not meet index one. Next one. Yet, they met index two, and that's puzzling, right? Because they did not meet index one for performance, but they met index two for growth, and that's very significant for Mrs. Murayda because it gives them a little bit of hope that the kids are growing. It's not necessarily that they're staying static, they're growing, and you can tell by that chart, the brown line is last year's, and almost all the kids were at the bottom, and you can see how much they grew from last year.
The brown is this year.
What is it? I'm sorry, can you go back to that slide?
The brown, the orange was
I
this
think it's
year.
the opposite.
Yeah, the orange was this year.
John, did I say up?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, this is this year, and this is last year's. So you can see that all these kids grew.
They didn't pass.
And yes, Mr. Chavita just reminded me that you're here, so you see all these kids down here, but all these kids did pass. Same thing here in North Heights. That's the chart. Go next slide. They did not meet index two. They did meet index one. It was 55, and they scored right at that point, 55. And it's the same thing there. You can see the brown line. It starts in the bottom, but then it grows. It actually stays in the bottom all the time because last year they scored better. Next one. And once again, this is evident that they did not meet index two because there was not enough growth from last year to this year. This is Lamar. This one is showing once again that this year was below last year, so they did not meet index one nor index two. Go next slide. And you can see here also that they did not meet index two, which is growth, and you'll see the blue lines below that brown line. At this time, I'm gonna pass it on to Mrs. Garcia. She's gonna talk about some of the questions that you were asking, Mrs. Rosano. And I'll answer any questions.
As you can see in the data, because we did remove the drilling kill, you could see that some of those scores from when they were in fifth grade, when they went to sixth grade, they decreased because, they were doing a lot more drills, so it didn't really add a lot of value to their education. But now we're really trying to build those students to be critical thinkers, to really read and write,
but of course, it's a paradigm shift, so it's gonna take time. And then, of course, with our new state accountability, last year, students that were in the bilingual program that were immigrants from first year to the third year, they were not counted in our accountability. And this year, they do count. So that also was part of the reason that our scores were affected. And then one thing that we also noticed is that we really need to implement our RTI. RTI is respond to intervention. It's really a multi-tier framework that helps us identify students that need interventions. So depending on the tier that they are, the higher the tier, the more intensive interventions that they need. And then another thing that we just came across is preparing students for third grade rigor. When the scores were shared to you, you did notice that third grade reading really took a dive. So now with our early literacy initiative, we're hoping that it's going to prepare those students like that by the time they get to third grade, they're gonna be ready. They're gonna be readers. So, okay, now what are we gonna do with our three populations that we're struggling with and they need all our help? One of them is the at-risk population. What the district has done, with your approval, is that we hired additional dyslexia teachers so that we can have one at each elementary campus. And what we're going to do is they're going to be dyslexia reading specialists. And because of their training, they're going to support our tier 3 students. So when the students go to the computer lab, then the teacher there at the computer lab can work with the students that are in the tier 2, and then the dyslexia teacher can work with the students that are in tier 3. And then the rest of the students will be on the computer,
Sure.
and those will be your tier 1 students.
I think Dr. Keys has a comment.
Talking about dyslexia teacher,
Uh-huh.
is it the reason that we're struggling here because we have that many kids that are diagnosed dyslexic? Is that or is this a blanket approach? Throw it out there.
No, I think, Dr. Keys, the purpose is, it's not so much that we have dyslexic, that many students with dyslexia, that's not it. The issue is that because of the model we've had, our dyslexia teachers have only been providing services to students with the dyslexia. But by placing them on the campus, they can continue to provide the intervention to students identified as being dyslexic, but they can expand the services to students that are not dyslexic but have reading problems. So it's providing more of that intervention and individual help.
I have a big concern with that because, in an analogy, it says you're a nurse. Somebody walks in the doctor's office with a cough. Are we saying they have cancer or they have strep throat? We're doing the same thing here. We should throw it out there, and we're going to hurt somebody.
No.
I'm not convinced with this because we're playing diagnosis here. We're not ready for that yet. Right? By throwing a blanket approach to dyslexia, it may work for some people. It may be damaging for other people. We have to be more exact.
But it's a different level of intervention, Dr. Keys. A dyslexic student would
I
not get-
understand that, but we're talking about dyslexic versus scores. Those are two big variances there.
That's not the case. I'd like a chance to explain them, please, as a board.
Go ahead.
A student that has dyslexia gets services for a dyslexic student. But the same person that provides the dyslexic services has some skills in providing reading intervention. Now, if you look at I would venture to say just about every elementary school across the state, they provide specific reading intervention to students who are lagging behind in reading.
But a while ago, you identified as a dyslexic teacher.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, sir.
That's what you call it. But now you're saying something totally different here. I'm confused here. I'm confused.
Well, that's why I'd like to explain to Dr. Keys.
You won't explain, but you keep on repeating yourself over and over. We're stuck in the same trap between dyslexia and scores. We just have 4 schools that need improvement. This is not helping me whatsoever to say, okay, this is how we can improve it. I don't see the connection here. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You keep on telling me, I don't get you. You don't let me talk. I don't get that.
What do you want to do, Mr. President?
Dr. Keys, your specific question is for Dr. Rios?
My specific question for our presenters
Okay.
was that, okay, are we doing a blanket approach with dyslexia here, or are we specifically identifying the kids that need that service? Because my concern is, if we're doing a blanket approach, what if there's a couple kids that don't need this service? Are we helping the kid, or are we damaging the kid?
Right.
And that's where my concern comes up.
Okay, and what it is that, okay, currently when we explored the number of students that are dyslexia teachers were servicing, like for example, at one campus, they were servicing 10 students. So what we thought is that they can have a dual role. So they will, assist the students with the dyslexia therapy, but then the other time, they'll go ahead and work with students that are in tier 3. And they can use some of those strategies because they're just good scientific research-based strategies to help the students learn to read.
And Dr. Keys, by all means, we are not doing a blanket statement. We're not. That's not.
Another concern of mine is, dyslexia is a federal program. We have to follow the guidelines. And the big strict guideline is, make sure the kid that's getting that service has been diagnosed for that. We're missing that point right here. And I don't want the federal government to come down here and say, whoa, 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 you guys aren't doing what you're supposed to do. That's what I want to avoid. That's why I'm not trying to make it difficult and not letting you talk. I don't understand that comment.
If I may ask a question? The ideal thing would be to have reading specialists. I mean, I think, you have dyslexia teachers that are already, in direct contact with the students. And I do have a problem with that. What I've seen is you go to San Antonio, they have a reading specialist for these struggling readers. But I think, when you compare where they have 10 students, that's almost like saying we have a speech pathologist that has 10 students. Yeah, but they require a lot of attention, and it's not the same. What I would like to see is I'd like to see the instructional coaches, do half a day of mentoring and half a day of intervention. They don't have direct contact with kids, and yet they're teachers.
One of the questions I think I'm formulating is, you're talking about these, the dyslexia reading specialists. Now, we've added a couple of positions, right? But you're also telling me at the same time that the roles of those individuals, those in place, and I assume those who are going to be in place soon, right, the posted positions, has increased,
Right.
correct?
But they're not certified. The new ones are not certified.
They aren't certified? Can we confirm that?
Is that a question for Dr. Patty, or is that a question for CNI?
The new
Anyone?
dyslexia teachers have been recommended or certified as an elementary teacher, but I don't believe they've gone through the dyslexic training.
So they have to be shadowed
Okay.
by a certified person.
So, there's an addition of staff, but there are concerns about their ability to take up those additional duties, right?
I mean, the ideal thing would be specialists, reading specialists. But since we have the additional personnel that, we have the instructional coaches, I don't see why they can't do the interventions. They need direct contact with the kids.
So then the question pops in my head is the whole role of the dyslexic teacher to be an RTI person? I thought their whole role, according to federal standards, was to treat a child with that disability. That's where I have a concern.
There's several concerns, because I know special ed, I mean, they're under the umbrella of special ed, and yet they're gonna be working with the regular ed.
The funding isn't,
No, but they're
funding will
under-
be the issue, Mr. Mesa, of
No,
being
they're
in special
under-
ed, and they're not being funded through special ed funds.
But they're under Diana Aguirre, Dr. Aguirre.
That is, yes, he is gonna help us supervise that. Until we transition them to our early literacy person, while she gets,
Well, if I may ask a question, I know, we added an extra day to the instructional coaches, and we're burdening the dyslexia teacher by giving them twice as much work with no days. It doesn't make any sense to me.
we did not add any days to our instructional coaches, sir.
We did not
discussed it, but we did not. And that was mentioned at the last, 2 budget workshops ago.
Okay, so for clarification, because a couple of workshops ago, there was the proposal, right? So that's not going to be
No.
in effect.
But they have no direct contact with kids right now, and yet they're teachers.
just recently hired to address some of our reading issues,
You mean early literacy?
early literacy?
That's pretty,
We have a bullet coming up, that's early literacy plan. If you like, we could bring her up here and she can talk about this.
Dr. Rios?
I think that, to get back on the focus is, this district has, provide services to our dyslexic students through certain individuals that we've hired and we've trained. But I would be, I guess I don't want anybody to think that there's a specific certification required to provide services to dyslexic students. Some districts do it through a regular reading teacher. Some districts do it through a paraprofessional in a prescribed program. We have a strong dyslexic program, but it isn't efficient because we have teachers that travel from one campus to the next providing the dyslexic services. By adding more reading specialists and training them, we will continue to provide the services to our students using the program that we've used all along, but they will also be free because they'll travel less and we'll have more of them to provide reading interventions to other students that we've identified with specific gaps. But not everybody, and not using the same type of interventions.
see, that they still have to travel because they still have to shadow these new people at the other campuses. They do.
Okay, can I just ask
Go
a
ahead.
quick, I believe I understood you to say, Dr. Rios, there is no specific dyslexia certification required to work with children who are diagnosed as having dyslexia?
No, we can have Dr. Aguirre, there might be a recommendation, but unless every district I've worked with has been violating the policy, we would like to have reading specialists work with our students. But Dr. Aguirre, you can correct me if I'm wrong.
What Del Rio has is, uses the Scottish Rite model. The training that y'all are referring to is the Scottish Rite model training. Now, that is a 2-year training. However, Region San Angelo now is changing the training so that the new people only have to go once a month, 1 day per month, and they will get their training by the end of the year. One of the persons that's been recommended is already trained. They had already attended the training. But many districts use reading specialists to provide the dyslexia interventions. So Del Rio uses the Scottish Rite model, and that's the training that they're referring to.
But no certification.
All right, but in a different question. Dr. Aguirre, if we use those dyslexia specialists to help other children that don't have dyslexia, will that in any way negatively impact the kids who do have dyslexia?
No, because they
I mean,
will
are we
be-
taking away from them to?
No, because they will be focusing on those students that have dyslexia and providing those interventions during specific times. Now, the time that they will work on providing interventions will be other times. Now, we're gonna look at the program, but there isn't a set program in the state of Texas. It's just that Del Rio uses Scottish Rite.
Okay, you just said we're gonna look at the program, you text the, okay, but why are we going this direction so fast then? If we're going too fast, I think, too many blanks here, and I just feel bad for the kids that are really dyslexic, cause that's a disability that's on the increase somewhat.
They'll continue to get their services. Nothing's gonna be,
And then I'm very concerned when you said about, I don't know why we're comparing ourselves to other districts with this, but when you say about, other districts use reading specialists for dyslexia, I go, well, I didn't wanna go that direction. I want our dyslexic person to take care of a dyslexic student, not somebody else. That's like a speech pathologist well, listen to the dyslexic teacher instead, the student that needs that service. We're crossing too many lines here, and we're gonna get ourselves in trouble.
Just, if I may ask another question. I was looking at, like Calderon, there was one teacher that had 30 students, there were 29 out of 30 that were tier 3. How many tier 3 students do we have?
Well, there's a lot of tier 3 students, and that's something that we've discussed already. Because in planning what we're going to do with RTI, we have to have a true screener in place, because the way the screener had been used in the past, the students were going into the lab and they maybe were taking the test and not having the supervision that was necessarily required to make sure that it was a true picture. And that is something that we will do once we begin the school year and start administering screeners. I'm not saying that these dyslexia therapists or reading specialists will work with all students. That's not going to probably be possible. But we really want to focus on those strugglers that need our support.
But could you give me a number, approximately tier 3?
Well, it just depends. I didn't bring it with me. But we're looking at end of the years. It's in the card. We're looking at quite a few students. So if we're looking, say, for example, at really the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students, depending on the campus, we've got hundreds. So we've got to really come up with an appropriate screening instrument that's going to give us that good information so that we really know who the strugglers are.
So let's say that we have a number, 500, tier 3. Do you not think that that's going to take away from, the program, the dyslexia program? And, I mean, they've been very successful.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I don't think they're going to be working with that many students. I really don't think that's...
Tier 3?
I don't think that's an appropriate number. That's why we have to reevaluate our students, because you can't have that many students who are tier 3.
Would you be able to get your numbers from the car? Tier 3?
I can get them.
I'm interested.
Okay, and remember, these were end of the year results from last year, but it's quite a few.
I will say that if there is a certain amount of number of students, that doesn't mean that only those teachers are going to be working. There's going to be an assortment of people helping these students, Mr. Mesa. It's not just going to be one.
Well, my suggestion is get the instructional coaches to do it and leave the dyslexia program alone.
I want to just, our commitment to dyslexic students is not going to change. We're required to provide services. However, I will share with the board, we have ran an inefficient system. I can also share with you the very limited number of students that specific dyslexic teachers have been servicing for the whole year. And the numbers are just incredibly small. And I'm not blaming the teachers, I'm blaming the system that we've set up for them. So now, granted, we're adding more teachers, but that's just because we want to get specific in the campuses that we've had. But the numbers have been very small. We have definitely not been getting the bang for our buck. We need to maximize the services that we give to students that need it. But we're not going to take away any less from any dyslexic student. We would never do that. On a personal note, I have a daughter that's dyslexic. And my little Emma is going to get the same services or better that she's had every year. I wouldn't do that to my kid. I wouldn't do it to any other kid. But we have ran an inefficient system, and we have not provided a consistent reading intervention for students that need it. And that's the only goal that we're trying to get to here.
Okay, right now you just said about the dyslexic program that we don't have service that many people. I wish we would have had this information when we're going through the budget and the organizational chart. So like that, we would, okay, then let's move some money over here so we can bring in more teachers for what we need over here. We can play with our budget like that. This is not news to me. I go, wow, I thought it was a growing problem. Now I hear the opposite now. Wow.
Let me ask you a question. And the question is, you mentioned bang for the buck. We used to have one person do the mentoring program, and I felt she was doing a tremendous job. Now we have 13. That's not getting the bang for the buck. And they have no direct interaction with one student. Why is it that they couldn't do mentoring half a day?
Mr. Mesa, I think now we're digressing. the topic was the at-risk population, and now we seem to be veering into instructional coaches
Well,
specifically.
no, he said bang for the buck, and I mean, we can't use bang for the buck. Not, that does not fit 1 to 13 people, personnel units.
We're gonna continue this slide.
Yes. Okay, we want to continue having, or have this year daily RTI time allocated to our daily schedule. That's something that we did not do last year. Therefore, we feel that even though the planning was happening and, the rigor was there, what about those kids that were not at that level? So we need to have the RTI, so either the teacher, or somebody can work with interventions with the students. And then also, we just finished our plan of action for our early literacy. So the plan is very detailed. It has a component for instruction. It has a component for assessment, for professional development. And it's very specific as to, okay, what is the teacher's responsibility? What is the instructional coach's responsibility? What is the administrator's responsibility? And it has timelines so that we can make sure that everybody is in the same playing field. And then also we want to strengthen and focus our math and ELA planning. We want to make sure that we integrate cross-curricular so that we can have more time, because if we integrate, then the teachers will have more time to work on their daily RTI. And then, of course, we want to collaborate with district-led science and writing plans, because most of the schools at the upper grade levels, they have 1 or 2 science teachers or 1 or 2 writing teachers. So if we bring them together as a district, then they can plan together and make those lesson plans rigorous. And then we'll continue with the at-risk. We want to continue developing the teacher capacity. This summer, we did the Abidos Writing Institute. We had letters trainings for teachers K through 5. Campuses that will be in improvement required will have a district personnel assigned to that campus so they can help them with the data, so that they can look at the intervention groups, identify the intervention groups, identify what interventions they'll be doing with the students. And we have at Lamar Elementary, we have Marta Galindo. At Dr. Fermin Calderon, we have Maite Solis. At North Heights Elementary, Angie Sanchez. And San Felipe Memorial Middle School, Jennifer Sutton. So these staff members will be at these campuses for half a day, Monday through Thursday, to assist the principals, like I mentioned earlier, with the data, the intervention groups, and then also preparing for the improvement plan that will be submitted to the state in before October the 31st, and then quarterly updates. And of course, something very important is just continue frequent communication at all levels. As far as our bilingual and ESL improvement plan, we plan to merge and integrate the bilingual ESL department within the Department of Curriculum Instruction. Right now, we have 2 bilingual strategists for, 13 campuses. So what we want to do is we want to bring them into the curriculum instruction, like that they work on Fridays with the coaches, give them the strategies that the bilingual students need to be able to be successful, and then the coaches take it to the campus and work with the teachers, to help them. And then also enhance the quality and access to general education for advanced and advanced high students. Something that proved to be very successful at San Felipe Memorial this year was that the students that were bilingual, advanced or advanced highs, they put them in the general ed classrooms. So they were exposed to the full curriculum. And that's what really helped them to have those 9 points increase from last year. So we want to try to do that with the rest of our campuses. And then also provide flexible scheduling for intermediate and beginner level classes depending on campus needs. We want to try to keep those classes for intermediate and beginners small groups, and then also maybe have an aide there so that they could work really close with the students. As far as our special ed population, long gone are the days that all the students, whenever it was math or reading, they would go to resource. We really need to have them be part of the classroom with the general ed, so have access to the full curriculum, because the expert is the general ed teacher. The special ed teacher works from kinder all the way to 5th grade, so they cannot,
you know, they're not that expert at that curriculum like the general ed teacher. So we want to have more inclusion models for the elementary students. We also want to provide staff development to the instructional aides in assisting classroom instruction and assisting reading instruction to support inclusion at elementary, as well as increase the instructional rigor and continuity of instructional planning for life skills and provide the RTI interventions. Something that is going to happen this coming year is that the life skills students, before we're administer a STAR alt test, and this year it's going to be different. Before it was just based on observation, and now it's actually going to be a paper pencil test. So we also have to have some planning going on with those classrooms. Okay, so looking ahead, we still have not received a letter from the state as far as the guidelines for the improved required campuses. But we do have to submit a improvement plan, and we have to have a district intervention team. We have to have a campus intervention team. We have to select a professional service provider, which Region 50 will help us also select one that matches our needs of our district. And in the plan, the factors identified through the data analysis and recommendations determined through the needs assessments must be addressed in the plan. And there are 7 critical success factors that must also be included in the plan. And one of them is academic performance, use of quality data to drive instruction, leadership effectiveness, increased learning time, family community engagement, school climate, and teacher quality. And these improvement plans, last year they were due to TEA by October 31st, so we're saying that this year is probably going to be the same, even though we haven't received the guidelines. And the plans will be submitted on a quarterly basis to TEA and Texas Center of District of School Support. And the campuses and accountability system for the intervention team is responsible for completing the progress reports.
Questions? Mr. Mesa?
I have 2 questions, but I just wanted to share some information first. There's 4,624 elementary campuses in the state of Texas. Out of 949 districts, 4,112 met standard, which is, again, the state is pretty much 89%, 88.9. 12% needs improvement. And when I started comparing every district, whether, you know, it's middle school, because, you know, there are 69 schools that are not rated, like Cardwell, for example. And then, you know, we break down our elementary schools here. In our district, we scored 68% because you start taking Cardwell away, not rated. And that's the way it was in the state. Again, 88.9 state, our score was, our percentage 68%. 42 improvement required. Middle school, 88%, pretty much a state, you know, number of middle schools, and then you divide by number that met the standard. Here we have 2 middle schools, of course, you know, we don't have a whole lot, but that's 50%, okay, when you count middle schools in our district. Then you start looking at other indicators, for example, San Angelo, 90%. This is the district, okay, percentage. Our percentage, 81%. Then you start comparing with the groups that they normally compare us with. Eagle Pass, out of 24 campuses, 92%, okay? Harlandale, 87%, again, 24 schools. You know, I started counting, I'm thinking, you know, I'm going to delete the ones that are not rated and go with that. And then you have South San, 84%, Corpus Christi, 88%, Laredo, 86%. Then you look at Seguin that has been doing a program like ours, 82%. I mean, right what we have. And my question, and I'm going to direct it to our chairman, because I know that when you ran for the board, you were concerned with accountability. But I want to ask all the members, but I want to get a response. So for the sake of time, I'm going to ask our chairman, are you content with those ratings? And the other thing is, how many more experienced teachers do we have to lose? You know, they retire early because of this planning protocol. In other words, we need to take a very careful look at this planning protocol and say, you know what? Enough is enough. When you give me all these figures here, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, this is common sense. This is common sense. You start comparing it with the districts. The only one, Uvalde, again, is lower than us. Everybody else, San Angelo. San Angelo, 90%. And all these districts have a lot more schools. And again, they don't make any excuses. We're not doing well.
Your question?
My question is, because I know when you ran for the board, you said there was very little accountability. Are you content with these percentages? And the other question is, how many more experienced teachers?
Let's do one question at a time. Okay. The answer to your first question is no. I'm certainly not pleased. I'm disappointed. I have full faith in the teachers of our district and the good and important work that they do. I noticed you didn't bring up Uvalde, CISD, but we could certainly bring those up.
68%.
So, other than stating the obvious, what was your second question?
Is how many more experienced teachers do we have to lose because of this planning protocol? Because I'm not going to sit idle here and have our teachers retire early because of this planning protocol and the teacher morale.
And that question is for discussion.
How many more teachers can we afford to lose? Experienced teachers. And it's really for the whole board. I mean, I'm not happy, sir.
So there is a question on the table. If you would repeat the second question, because I think that's a general question for
Yeah,
everyone.
how many more experienced teachers are we going to lose in this district before we say no to planning protocol? But that's really a question for
For the board, or for the superintendent?
Well, I think,
Well, the day-to-day activity,
yeah, I'm asking these questions really to the entire board, but I wanted to get an answer. Like, we're losing too many experienced teachers.
well, and you will, but if it pleases the board, is there any other, Dr. Keys?
Now, earlier, Dr. Garcia was talking about all the numbers. He said it's all boring stuff and all, but I like it. I find that interesting. Then you're sharing with us about standard deviations, right? Now, a while ago, brought to us that the average on the scores was 88 statewide, and that we're at 68%, right? That's 2 standard deviations down. Our students compared to the state average. So it's like, wow, so we're way behind. It's like, an analogy would be like, if the state had a B average, we have a D average, because we're 2 standard deviations down. So 20 point, that's 2 letter grades there. So if you look at what Dr. Garcia shared with us about standard deviation, and you apply it to this situation right here, well, maybe that will really exacerbate the urgency we have with our scores now. And we cannot just say, okay, it'll get better tomorrow. We have to be proactive and do something about it. And we have to look at what we have here and be careful with our crossing. It can be done, but we have work to do. We're 2 standard deviations down.
Dr. Rios, I think you want to respond.
Well, yes, absolutely. Because there's a lot of things said, but really what I'd like to do is to remind this board and our community to look at the history of Del Rio. We're obviously concerned, and none of us are happy with the results. Yet those of us that study the data enough, we can see, what we've done to improve it and where we still need to add. But I certainly don't want anybody to insinuate that this is a one-year problem. If we look at the history of Del Rio and we want to compare it to other districts, because sometimes sometimes we're comparing, sometimes we don't want to compare. But I invite everybody to go back and look at the last 2 years with No Child Left Behind, and not a single campus, I need to finish, sir.
No, I know.
Not a single campus in our district, with the exception of high school, made No Child Left Behind. That was the last time that they had an accountability system that looked specifically at students like this system is looking at. Now, I'm not shying away. This is the system that we have, and this is what we need to move forward. But let's look back at the historic problem that we've had. The second thing I would invite the board to consider is when I shared with y'all the report put out by the comptroller's office, in the area of reading, as a district, we were in the bottom 12% of the entire state. I just need everyone to understand that this is a historic problem, has absolutely nothing to do with the planning protocol, because the data that we showed that looked at individual students, we could see where our teachers are playing together and moving forward. That we have some teachers that are concerned about it, absolutely, but change is difficult. And if we look at the greater majority, we're headed in the right direction. At least the leadership team of the district feels that we're headed in the right direction. But the problems are historic. They're not related to this year, Mr. Mesa, or board members. They definitely aren't. But the gains are related to this year.
Well, if I may say, you're comparing apples to oranges, sir. You know, this No Child Left Behind, that's a federal standard. These are state standards. I'm not going by AYP. I know, you know, that federal standard, No Child Left Behind, was reauthorized because they felt like one size fits all. I mean, I went to Washington, D.C. to say, you know what, you got to rewrite this whole program. It does not meet, you know, the standards that we have in our district, and that's the whole challenge. You're comparing apples to oranges. Why don't you compare state to state, and then tell me what you feel about this program? Because Seguin is at 82, right where we are, and Seguin has had this planning protocol longer than we have.
That's not accurate. It's not accurate.
Seguin's not at 82?
No, your comparisons aren't accurate.
It's federal. No Child Left Behind is you could be recognized and not meet AYP. I mean, that's how bad it was.
It happened in our freshman school a couple years ago.
My campus was recognized and did not meet AYP. He's comparing apples to oranges.
No, sir, I'm saying the likelihood of the program, just like San Felipe Memorial this year made significant gains, just like they would have been recognized, but yet they didn't make it because of the depth of the accountability system. And all I'm saying is that NCLB had a deeper, more complex accountability system than the state had at that point. The current state accountability mirrors more that of NCLB. That's all I'm saying. But I'm just making showing the similarities of the two comparison systems and trying to point out that we've had a historic problem with reading scores in the district that predate, you know, this current administration.
For point of reference, the report you're referring to is,
No Child Left Behind, AYP.
he's referencing the FAST.
The FAST report is a state report.
Okay, Mr. Chavita wanted to interject, and then Mr. Mesa will come back to you.
Okay, why don't we just go ahead and wait and let's get the reports going on. We have on item 10, the administration, I think at that time with the superintendent phone calls we're going to be discussing, at that time, I think it'd be a more appropriate time to discuss where we're at. Because right now, we're comparing, we have a presentation here and it's at a stop, and I think we're deviating from.
No, they finished.
And then we can come back and.
Their report's finished. Other questions?
No, if I may, that's not a fair comparison, federal to state. All the information that I gave you here is state. It's not federal.
Other comments? Can we move on?
Please.
I, for one, am interested in seeing the path forward. Not the sound and the fury about where we are, but the path forward. So hopefully that's forthcoming. Okay. We're going to move on to agenda item 8, consent agenda. Consent agenda, you'll notice, starts agenda item 8, number of items, rolls on for approximately 2 pages. Does any board member wish to pull any items from the consent agenda for discussion? No discussion of the consent agenda? Just a real minor edit, Betty, and just so everyone can follow along since it involves the minutes. On page 20, and I'm speaking on the consent portion, Betty, on the minutes. Do you see it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6th line down, it's just a grammar thing where it says the decision should be made, not make. That's my fault. I missed it in the copy. So if you could just fix that. Okay, if there's no discussion or agenda items under the consent to be pulled, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda? Mr. Mr. Mesa has motion, Mr. Shavita has second. All in favor by show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. There were a few donations under the consent agenda, as is the custom. Is there a board member who would like to read the donation list?
This month's donations: American Welding Society, $750 to Del Rio High School Metal Trades. Box Top Education, $547.70 to Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary. And Life Touch, $80.40 to Irene C. Cardwell Elementary Migrant Program.
Is that it?
That's what's on my thing here, unless I missed something.
Okay, so as always, we appreciate and we say thank you to those individuals and businesses that donated to the students of our district. Agenda item 9, citizens to be heard. Ms. Falcone? Okay. Agenda item 10, administration, 10A. I need someone to drive the website. Dr. Garza, you've graciously volunteered. If you'd go to About Us, and right there, George, right there on the far left, About Us. Just hover over, no. Hover over About Us. Yes, okay. And hover over the first one, no, the Board of Trustees. And the evaluation calendar, 14-15. Click that, yeah. Just for a quick reiteration, the board considers and approves superintendent performance goals in September. But what administration did is actually included them in this packet, not for approval at this time, but just for kind of a, what's the word, a preview, just a sort of an FYI, this is kind of where they are. If you have something specific to say between now and when they would come back in September, you have actually a template to look at in your individual excuse me. They're under the tab, should be a tab. There's a yellow page. Yeah, it's way in the back. And what administration did is they included the goals that were part of the 13-14 evaluation instrument with a draft of 14-15. But again, the reason I put on their discussion, it's something that's still ongoing. It doesn't really come back until September. So if there was something that you noticed in your board packet or something that you want to clarify or to elaborate on, but it's not for action until next month. Looks, I don't found a typo, but it's not any substance. Sorry, I did it. Okay, since there doesn't seem to be any discussion, I think what I recommend is that the board take some time between now and the September regular to help the superintendent prioritize and kind of fine-tune performance goals for this year. I did notice one of them specifically states, explore and implement programs that address the improvement of teacher climate and overall district morale, and I think that's a very good one to add. Certainly takes into account some survey results, so I think that is one that can be kind of fleshed out a little bit more. I'm glad to see that one on the list. Some of the others, also just kind of for review, come back maybe individually. You might include in your board update, if there's feedback or some sort of consideration individual. Okay, agenda item 10, did you have something? Ms.
Just to
Lozano?
clarify, Mr. Garabedian, so you're asking each of the board members then to work individually with our
Well,
superintendent?
if you see something, that you think maybe is lacking or something that, maybe not clear, now would be a good time. Not now specifically today, but knowing from the calendar that it comes back in a month, right, to kind of have those individual discussions. That's what we're asking. That's why it's in the packet. In fact, when we set the agenda, I told the superintendent, reminded him that, well, it's really not until September, but he wanted to put it in the packet for individual board members to see ahead of time, provide some feedback.
So at this point, this would be the ideal opportunity in finalizing the performance goals where each of us who have concerns, such as the ones that Mr. Mesa was just raising, we could then modify, revise, suggest.
Certainly provide some feedback or some ideas, because between now and the September regular is approximately a month.
Okay, thank you.
Rather than, here it is, for example, September, and here are the goals, and then, no, let's wait a month, table them, whatever. That's why it follows the calendar. Specifically with, having a summer to look at the survey, accountability rankings, things like that. It seems more prudent to kind of give a preview of what the goals might be. Otherwise, we'll be here in late September, and it might be like, well, let's wait a month or 2 months, and that is in no way the proper way to approach it.
With so many concerns being aired just right now, should we have a meeting to further discuss these goals? Or do you
We could.
really want to have each one of us work with
We
the
certainly,
superintendent?
that's another point of discussion. We certainly could entertain. Last year, we had a workshop meeting specifically for the instrument, because we brought the goals as an item in September and approved them, knowing that the goals become a part of the instrument. So that's a possibility as well, to have a workshop where actually sit down and talk specifically about that. It wouldn't be anytime soon. CFO sitting there saying, well, we have a hearing and we have these other, no, it wouldn't be this week or next week, but it certainly could be once the school year gets underway, September.
It was just a
And if we have the
suggestion.
instrument from last year to use as a model to start off this year, pretty quick.
Is there any interest on the board to have a workshop, a little more discussion?
We have one this Friday, don't we?
But this Friday, the agenda is
the budget
for the
workshop.
hearing.
Ooh.
Mr.
Mr.
Chavita?
Chairman, I, for one, would like to get our superintendent to elaborate on last year's goal. I don't want the public to be misinformed as to that we're not doing, that he's not doing the job. I think I think I was the one that said, hey, let's go ahead and go into something else. But I think at this time, I sure would like the superintendent, if you people don't mind, for him to, I don't know, maybe I'm asking for too much, I don't know. I sure would like for everybody to know what's going on, not just us. Because right now, we're on TV. And I don't want the people to get misinformed or misled as that he might not be doing his job.
So Mr. Chavita, do you have a specific question? Is that what you're asking? Or?
Yes, I would say, I was asking that maybe our superintendent could elaborate on some of the goals that
Maybe kind of where
yes,
he is and where he...
from last year as to what was done this past year. Because Mr. Mesa brought up a fact, some numbers that he had here, and it seemed like that we didn't quite do our job.
Do you want to comment on the goals that are included? Or
Yeah, I'm
maybe
prepared to
something
respond to
specific
it.
to Mr., I'm not quite sure. I think Mr. Chavita might have a question.
I just want,
Sure.
based on on the goals that we approved for last year. And this would be a good time for him to let us know, let the people know.
Mrs. Lozano? Okay, and Mr. Overfeld has a question. Mr. Overfeld?
Before we get drawn into that, we've been at it for 2 hours. Would it entertain the board to have a 5-minute recess after sitting for 2 hours before we get into this here, because I feel it might be lengthy? Or do we want to move forward?
Yeah, as long as we come back to it.
And if I may, these are all percentages that are available to everybody. I'm not misleading anyone. The only thing is, we get a report from a superintendent when we do, you know, the formative. That's when we hear, again, the accomplishments.
Well, I just don't want I want everybody to hear.
Well, the thing is, it's like Mr. Overfeld.
Go through the numbers. I just want to make sure that
I'm not misleading the public.
what was that again?
I'm not misleading the public.
Mr.
No, I didn't say that.
Mr. Mesa, I don't think that's what Mr. Chavita said. Mr. Overfeld seems to want to take a restroom break. I so move that we take a 5-minute recess. Is there a second? Ms. Haynes, a second. All in favor? A show of hands. Okay. 6 in favor. Dr. Keyes, did you want to take a restroom break?
I'm fine.
We're back in session. Okay, Mr. Chavita asked, and I'm sure he'll clarify, if Dr. Rios could look at the 2014-2015 proposed goals to just kind of give us an idea of where you're headed, what your priorities are, that sort of thing.
I think, if I may, sir, I think he asked about the 2013-2014 goals.
Yes.
Is that accurate? I'll start from the bottom up, since the last bullet, or the first bullet, might have some discussion. But if we look at the third goal, the district shall provide meaningful and effective communication in a timely manner. I'll highlight some of the things that we did. Establishing protocols for communicating with the community. I think that everyone will agree that our public relations officer and that team has improved the website, has included all the postings of the different activities and maintained it updated. We have started that insert that we do quarterly in the newspaper, where we create ourselves and the newspaper prints it and creates it as an insert, and it gets to every community. District personnel, I've been diligent about doing my notes from the superintendent's desk, where I update everybody as to what's going on in the district, as far as making more than one visit to address the faculty at each campus. Communicating with the Board of Trustees, I provide y'all weekly updates. I think they're thorough, and I certainly haven't had anything indicating that they're not, or anything else that I've added. And questions that you've asked, I share responses with the entire board. That would cover goal 3. I think, I'm sorry.
And if I can just interject, because, okay, so moving into this year, you've outlined a couple of things, right, that to scale up, I guess, is the term, that you're considering at this point.
Well, I think that for what we need to do this coming year, what we want to take, the biggest goal is to update the Channel 39, so that we have, rather than have PowerPoints, have more constant videos of highlighting what students are doing throughout the district, just more of the news. But we have some work to do with the way that our system speaks to the community out there. If you see something right now in the video, it looks very clear, but as the community sees it, the detail is difficult. So we're looking to invest some money in that, but also maintain what we've been doing in communicating with everybody this coming year. But the focus for this coming year is definitely Channel 39, and just putting more out there for the community to see, as well as going through and again visiting with the community organizations and sharing with them the programs and the direction that we're headed in. The second goal, just a good steward of the community's resources. If we look at the budget and the updates that Ms. Valdez has provided at every one of the budget committee meetings, you'll see that we implemented a budget this year that was very tight, but at the end of the day, we're still gonna end up having, a lot of money left over. Yet we were able to do everything that we set out to do within the budget. As far as the personnel retention plan, the presentation that was given earlier in terms of the EIP grant and the trainings that we've provided to the teachers are very significant. I will ask Dr. McNamara to share with the board, or share with me so I can share with the board in an update, the amount of teachers that we lost this year as compared to other years, so that we can see actual numbers of how many teachers have left the profession this year versus other years. And I think you're gonna find that there isn't a difference at all. But I'd rather show you all actual numbers and names and let y'all make up your own mind. And then, as far as a committee to look at the needs, you know, we set out to form a citizens committee to review the needs of the district and to recommend an appropriate use of the $25 million. We've done that. We've begun some projects. We extended that by hiring a consultant to do a demographic study to see if we're gonna be growing to the north, to the south, that we need to rezone the schools, so that again, we can provide the board some options into how we grow in the future. So I think that we've done that in a very detailed manner. Now looking at District Goal 1, ensure instructional technology be used effectively in all content areas to create a positive digital district presence. We have increased the one-to-one initiative where this coming week we'll be handing high school students their device. We've rewired the high school. Our curriculum department has been very diligent in building our new repository for resources. The feedback that we've gotten so far on what's been done has been excellent. What we're seeking to do is to transition the district from what was the C-scope that was taken away and all the model lessons, and creating those resources all over again in our own repository system that will never be taken away, because there are resources. And I mentioned to the board also previously what we're doing with the electronic textbooks, and just trying to use our money more efficiently so that those resources are there. Ensure the implementation of a district-wide professional development plan. What we did here is that in the past, the staff development, it would be a menu of resources, but it would change from year to year, and it was almost like what's available at the service center. What the service center did this year is that they sat down and met with us, and we aligned their staff development with what our goals are. And they've done a lot of work, so my hat's off to the service center for, you know, we're not there yet, but my hat's off to them in terms of what they've done and how they've been able to just reach out. And the first bullet on that, you know, it is specifically the plan protocol. The district personnel implement sound instructional practices conducive to attainment of the highest standards of excellence as described in the board-approved district campus performance objectives. And what I will share with the board and the community is that, you know, I understand that we're not where we want to be. And the initial opinion might be that, you know, that we've regressed. But regardless of what accountability we look, whether it's a state FAST report or NCLB, the district has historically had a problem, particularly with reading achievement. That goes back 6 years ago. We started seeing the decline, the consistent decline in reading scores to where we are ranked 12th, in the bottom 12th of the state. So I can't accept the notion that what we're experiencing today is related to the plan protocol. Research after research will tell you that significant change is the most difficult job, and that it takes time to see the differences. Research will further tell you that during the initial implementation, you might see what appears to be a regression, a dip. Okay? But I know that earlier it was stated, you know, are you happy with the results? Well, I don't think anybody sitting up here would say that they're happy, but what I would also, you know, ask is, you know, are we willing to throw all the work away after only 1 year, knowing what research says about, you know, the direction of change? And I would just ask the board openly, you know, to decide that. I'm not about to encourage anybody to micromanage, but I definitely want to have that conversation, board members. You know, are we willing to just cash it in after 1 year, knowing what we know about how difficult it is to implement change? You're not going to find a single I shouldn't say that because anybody can skew the research. But you'd be hard pressed to find any authentic research that says, oh yeah, well in the first year you're just gonna see change, and if you don't, you throw away. Everybody will tell you that real change takes 3 to 5 years, and the steps that we've taken mirror exactly what happens out there. So, Mr. Mesa asks, have we had enough planning protocol? And I say, are we ready to throw it out after 1 year, especially when we know that we are headed in the right direction? And I would not lead this district astray otherwise. It's difficult. It's the hardest work that we do. Very respectfully to some of our programs, I can sit here and brag about programs where it's numbers and cents, or buying computers and rewiring the district, and I think that both of those areas have done a terrific job. But when you deal with people, that's real work, and it's difficult. But I'm very focused and very certain that we're headed in the right direction. And I certainly don't want any of our employees, whether it be our instructional coaches or our teachers in the classroom, to think that we don't think they're working hard, because I can guarantee you that everybody's working hard and we're working together and we're headed in the right direction. So even though the numbers may not show very clearly that, again, we've tried to outline that for you all in today's presentation. We have a long ways to go, but folks, we had a long ways to go 6 years ago when we were 12th, the bottom 12%. That means that 88% of the schools in the state of Texas have done better than San Felipe Del Rio CISD historically. And it's just a big push uphill, but we're focused and we're headed in that direction. And I certainly ask for y'all's support in that process. And it is going to be difficult work, and we are going to be met with obstacles, but headed in the right direction we are, and we will continue as a district leadership team headed in that direction. That's and the goals for this coming year, they build on what we've done last year, but they add something. For example, we can see in goal number 1, we have sound instructional practices. What we don't have, and what we really need to focus on this year, is on implementing the RTI model. But I know that my special ed and bilingual department have spent the better part of this last year redefining our RTI model so that we can give those individual interventions to students and respond to them when they're not working accordingly. But we've been focused. We know what we have to do. We know what the shortcomings are, and we're headed in that direction. So every goal has another one that builds upon it. The only new one is, like the one that Mr. Garabini mentioned, about the climate and the district morale. We're having some conversations about how we're going to do to improve upon that. But I would very openly point out that the district goals that y'all approved last year, we focused on them, and you can see measurable results. The hardest one is the instruction, because it affects every teacher in the district. But it takes time, and we're headed in that direction, and that's where we're at. Did I answer your question, Mr. Chavira?
And I thank you, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood exactly what transpired this past year. And I think a lot what was done. And the last thing that I would like, because I'm not for sure that people understand exactly what, when we say protocol, will you elaborate on it? Just
the protocol is exactly just that. It's a process for planning, good instruction. It's just what we want every teacher to do in preparation for lessons. Look at data, look at standards, look at curriculum, and collaborate with each other as to the best way to deliver that. And then the last step is that 5th step, which goes back to our RTI model, where we have to improve in getting to that 5th step of the planning protocol, how we differentiate instruction for the kids that are most struggling. If you look at the data, you can see that we made improvements, but the kids that were struggling the most, they actually did some regression. So yes, we know that we have to maintain the focus on instruction, but we have to do more of that tutoring. We just can't rely on drill and kill that doesn't sustain the learning, beyond elementary, beyond high school. But protocol is just a step. There isn't anything in the plan protocol that anybody would say we should never do that in terms of planning instruction. There isn't one piece of planning protocol where anyone would say let's not do that. It's all sound instructional practices. Getting everybody to do them, improving everyone's skill set and doing them, well, that's a difficult part because we're asking everyone to do this. And very respectfully, I shared at the beginning of the year, I shared with the board, look, you know, it's okay if I go after one department and say, we need to focus on this or we need to focus on that. But here in this process, you know, we've moved everyone's cheese because we're asking everyone to do things different, to work a little harder. And in the long run, we will transform the entire community by making sure that every student is exposed to rigorous instruction and every student is improved. We can drill and kill, and we can get them through 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. It's going to be real hard to get them through middle school. And then those kids that do make it to high school, because some of them never will, you know, may be successful. But we're not about drill and kill. Drill and kill doesn't sustain afterwards, but so many educators across the state were faced to do that when remediation came in to game the system. But what happens when we game the system is that we win the short victory, but we lose the bigger battle, which is making students successful beyond high school. But I tell you that is difficult work, and most people shy away from it. And the reforms that we've seen not only across the state but across the country, when they had failed because, you know, people cashed it in after the first year. And that is the bottom line. Article after article will tell you that you have to have candid conversations about accountability systems and how they will be affected when you're implementing reform. Del Rio's not experiencing anything new, but we have to decide, are you going to allow me to stick to the plan, knowing that it is going to take a couple years, knowing that we're not experiencing anything different than other districts that implemented reform did, or are we going to make it impossible to where we can implement real reform, real instructional practices? I know that you all have concerns from different angles. I know that we keep bringing up the issue about the instructional coaches. And I tell you that, you know, if you don't know what the instructional coaches do, then it's easy, and they're targets. But I want every single one of instructional coaches, you know, to know that I value the work they've done. I value the leadership in the C&I department that works with instructional coaches. And we can ask some teachers, and they'll have their opinion, but we ask the larger majority, you know, they know how hard the instructional coaches work and what value they've added to our process. So I have to be committed to it. It is part of the plan. They are a key part of the plan. We have to obviously do different things with them. But it's also something that has to keep growing and evolving. And that's what a successful organization does. So as I look back at the goals that you all approved for me last year, I would venture to say that that our team, because it certainly hasn't just been me, it has worked very hard to implement them and has had a lot of success with them. We could sit here and nitpick, and we could throw out data, but no. We have met every one of those goals and made progress in it, and I'd like to be given the opportunity, without distractions, to continue with that success. That's my spill, sir.
And again, the goals that he included, comparison 1 year to propose for the next, the 14-15 goals come back in about a month. So any further discussion is certainly between now and then individually. That's why they're there.
And the other part is, I think that I also shared in the board update about the curriculum workshops, and that would be a perfect time to have, you know, all these discussions. But that's another issue, item that's coming up.
And Dr. Diaz, I want to thank you. And the reason that I wanted you to elaborate on it, because when I'm asked as to what the protocol was all about, my easy way of saying it, hey, we want to stop teaching, make reference to shooting from the hip. We want to make sure that what we do is it's work, it's sit down and like you said, get together as many minds as we can gather and come up with a finished product and be able to help our kids. So again, I thank you.
Agenda item 10B, discussion of board self-assessment, discussion to establish a curriculum instruction committee, operations committee. We mentioned, I believe it was at the last regular meeting, the possibility of a curriculum instruction committee. There was also in a board update subsequent to that, what that might look like in terms of the number of times it would meet. There was also the possibility of an operations committee. The reason I'm bringing it back is because those types of structural changes, as far as how the board tries to inform the process, really needs to, I think, be vetted somewhat, discussed somewhat, and if memory serves, I think when we first brought that as an item, and I know you put in the update a week or so later, but I think there was maybe 2 people who weren't here, because we were looking at the board self-assessment from the workshop of June the 9th. And when we discussed that, I think Dr. Keys wasn't here, and I think Ms. Lozano wasn't here. So knowing that there had been a little bit of individual discussion about possibly a curriculum instruction committee and or an operations committee, assuming, I was hoping that the whole board would be here, and it is. And so are there any new thoughts about that, the possibility of creating a curriculum instruction committee and or an operations committee?
And this would be a community-wide effort for people on the committee? Who will get, people from the school district or the community?
Dr. Rios?
The 2 ideas that we expressed is one that either we would have a standing agenda item every board meeting where we would bring different presentations on curriculum, or much like we have a finance committee where the members are the board president, Ms. Haynes and Mr. Overfelt, we would have a CNI committee where one of y'all would agree to chair it. It's open to the community to come in because it's a workshop where we would vet out different programs and go into detail.
So we're following the business finance committee model?
Yes, sir.
We could.
Okay,
We
that's
could.
what I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I think that would be great.
Okay.
And then same thing for operations.
So is, moving forward, developing a little bit more interest in both of those committees, or just curriculum and instruction? Mr. Mesa?
I think the reason operations came by, because of policy changes, a lot of times we don't really look at policy that has not been revised for 20-plus years. And, that's something that had been brought up in the past, that policy is something that we normally, because of the thickness of the book, we don't take a look at very carefully in detail as to how long ago it was revised. Like, for example, when DEC, which is employee leave and absences, and, when they retire and get compensated for the days they have left, it hadn't been revised for a very great number of years, so it was not up to date. And so there's other policies that are similar to that. And so that's why operations, I think operations is very critical.
So
I think you're right.
when we say an operations committee, we're not talking construction.
That's what I think.
That's, yeah, I think there's a little.
From our self-assessment, I recall, just as Mr. Mesa mentioned, that we would consider putting together really more of a board policy committee to ensure that we are looking at each and every single policy and making sure we're, if we need to revise it, we revise it. Because some of them haven't really been touched, like Mr. Mesa said, for several years. That's what I recall from that.
Yes, ma'am. And I think that the committee can definitely prioritize the focus of the committee because they would set the agenda. But in its formation, if we could talk about all aspects of their operations, so that in the future, for example, if I'm going to bring a demographic study to the board, and not that that would be the only one, but anything that I would bring to the board as a recommendation, it would be a benefit to the organization if we could vet it out with a smaller committee first, give them a thorough presentation that very frankly we wouldn't be able to do with the whole board that often, and they could be as quizzical about it as they wanted, so that we could make sure that we bring a more thorough recommendation to the board at that time. Now, clearly, the committee could say, well, no, first we want to just do policy, and we could set a calendar to where we would address the different ones. But once we're done with that, I'd like for the committee to continue, so that years from now, we could talk about other aspects, not just policy.
Okay, so what I'm hearing then is a green light to a CNI committee and an operations committee.
Mr. Chairman, I think
Yes,
that
sir.
maybe you and the superintendent get together,
Kind of flesh
map
out.
it out, and then assign or ask for volunteers and then go from there.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 10C, discussion of format for future construction project updates, contract language. You had a question about something?
Yes, I'm sorry, going back to, 10B.
Okay.
Just follow up from what Mr. Chavita said. I would recommend and suggest that we actually, that you check with the board members to see who might be interested,
And
other than
serve.
assigning.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's what you meant,
Yeah.
right?
Look for volunteers.
Yeah, who volunteers for it?
That's how we,
Dr. Keyes.
yeah, that's how we did the finance committee. It was
Okay, well,
appointed
volunteer,
as a
Coach Shavita.
volunteer. That's okay. You through?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, agenda item 10C, discussion of format for future construction project updates and contract language. This was really just kind of a thought regarding construction generally, not anything specific, not about any particular construction project, although it did kind of come to mind a month or so ago when Mr. Overfeld pointed out some points that I think had merit. What struck me was two things, and I'm not going to go into a lot of depth tonight. It's certainly not a one-shot discussion. But looking at the form of the contracts that are used, I found what I thought I would find, that there is a schedule, right? There is a construction schedule that is a part of the contract, correct? Historically, and I would assume that there have been construction updates presented to the board or boards for many, many years, a decade or more. Dr. Keyes would know, I guess, if anybody would know. During those updates, has the board ever had like the copy of the construction schedule to be able to
From my recollection, the schedule was presented to us like at the very beginning, like a presentation,
Okay,
but nothing was ever given to us to take home with us.
okay.
So that's how we went by. And now that you're talking about this, let me just throw one more thing about I don't want, before I forget about it, right? Another thing about the construction that I find unusual when we allow this happen here is, why do we allow the architects to make the motion and present everything? We have someone here that should do that. I just have trouble with an outsider making a recommendation for our district's money that we have to approve. It should come from within us only. I don't think it should be from an outsider.
Okay.
Last time John Grace was talking, and I was surprised, he made a recommendation for approval. I'm like, whoa, who's this guy?
Okay.
Whoa.
All right, so there was a time when there were the actual schedules presented?
But another handout that was more like in a presentation format.
Mr. Mesa?
Yes, if I may say, that's the way it was presented to us, but it was forever changing. You know, the deadline, you know how it is. It kept, you know, sometimes, you know, they have a final completion date, and then that would change. Now,
Or they come back to us, they need more money to finish the project.
a lot of times, you know, it could be change orders, but the majority of times it wasn't change orders, you know, that we initiated. It was delays.
Mr. Lozano?
The one construction project that I remember the timeline fluctuated a lot was Garfield. Because halfway through, they found all the water underneath there, but they should have found the very beginning, but they didn't. So they had to go back all over in, because they had to do some new drilling and put these pillars in there. And that took a long time.
The other one was North Heights,
Yeah. Yeah, North Heights had a big delay also.
6 months.
Might I suggest that the format for future construction project updates and contract language actually be one of the first tasks that the
For the
operations committee?
But I think that's really where I'm trying to go, right? I mean, if there's going to be significant construction, if we're not comfortable with the format of the updates, then the format changed. How exactly it can be changed, I'm not quite sure. That's why I bring up, the schedule where you can actually see what is proposed at the beginning versus what you're seeing month to month. Or if there's a question about, timelines or definition of a term, that's definable, that's compliant by a contract. It's not, an opinion or a feeling. So that's something else. So I guess you're saying that could be something reviewed under one of these new committees?
And then brought to the board.
I think TASB has some kind of format on construction.
There's a lot of vocabulary that we're not familiar with, like, let's say, punch list. And to me, the punch list is once you complete the project, you have so many days when you have kids in there and traffic, and then all of a sudden, let's say the board or baseboard, falls off, or there's bubbles on the tile. That's when you say, you know what, that needs to be fixed. And they have a certain amount of time. But under no circumstances should the final payment be made before the punch list is completed. And I have seen that happen on various occasions where the final payment is made, and then, what's the requirement for that person to come back and fix what didn't last?
But that's
2
governed
weeks.
in the contract, right?
Absolutely. Mr. Salinas and I have had discussions about when we're gonna release the retainage, and it's not released until the final item on the punch list is done. Now, I don't know what has happened in previous administrations. I just know in the projects that we've handled, we've been clear on that. We don't release the final amount until that punch list is completed. And right now, in the largest project we have, we're still holding on to that retention. It may happen in the past. It's certainly not gonna happen, as long as I'm superintendent.
And that's the way it should be.
I can say it hasn't happened in the past. We've held the money until the very end, and it's called the retainage of payment.
It happened once. I'm at North Heights,
What, without the project being complete, Mr. Messer?
without the punch list being done. It was, final payment was made before the punch list was even completed. I mean, I know that for a fact.
No, that's not correct. We don't release the final payment of retainage until everything is complete. Now, if you're talking about getting into warranty work, that's a different scenario altogether.
The punch list.
Any other feedback about possible structural changes for construction updates, other than a review by this soon-to-be, or yet-to-be, created committee? Okay. All right, we'll take that into consideration. That was probably a better idea than what I was thinking of how to do it, have the committee deal with it. It brings us to agenda item 11, curriculum instruction. A, consideration to approve books for Africa to pick up out of adoption textbooks and dispose of them at no cost to the district. Dr. Garza, tell us what this is all about.
Mr. Galvidian, Dr. Rios, the members of the board, we've done this continuously throughout the years. At this time, once again, we have 71 pallets that are at the warehouse that are no value to the district. We cannot use them. They're out of adoption books that the state does not want back, so we've done it every year, and there is Follett that communicates with us that they will gladly pick them up for a good cause for them to go to Africa.
Memo was self-explanatory. Any questions, though? Okay, the recommendation. Oh, did you have a question?
I do, and I think I asked the same question last year, or whenever we last send our books to Africa. And there's no one in the county that would need or want some of these textbooks. I mean, taxpayers.
Did we send them to Africa last year? I don't
Oh,
remember.
we've sent them before through
We
this.
did.
Yes, I don't know if it was last year or 2
Same
years
question
ago.
that I received, and we have contacted several people, and school districts around here are in the same situation that we are in.
And even private schools, sir?
Any of the private schools, I know that Mrs. Guerra, in some situation, we had conversations about that, and I don't know if it's because of procedures in coming to pick up 71 pallets, or some of them, or coming to review what we have. cause that would be a challenge too. But, no ma'am, we don't have any. I will gladly explore anything that, is suggested, but
I would just
Where'd it
want
go?
to give our local folks an opportunity, should they be interested, doesn't mean they would.
you know, we did that with,
I mean, I don't know how old these books can be. I know you're saying that they're,
we did that with the library books. I don't know if
Oh,
you
okay.
remember that.
That's
We
what I was
had-
gonna say, I
what it was.
remember some kind of
And
announcement.
we gave the community an opportunity to come pick it up. And they did, but we still had plenty of books left. I mean,
Well, I'm not
not
saying they'd take
71
them all,
pallets, but
71
we still
pallets.
had a lot of books left.
just a suggestion.
Can we do the same thing again? You know, open it up to
You already have a date for pickup?
Yeah, it looks
There
like
is
they've
a
already
date for
made
pickup,
agreement.
but it has to be approved by the board, and we are not gonna let anyone pick them up until the board approves. Actually, I don't have a date. He's just a communication between Follett and us. There is no date specified.
We can,
Reach out.
based on your approval and prior to us allowing them to come pick it up, we're not contracting them for specifically 71 pallets. They're gonna take what we have. And, if you'll allow me, after you approve the item tonight, I will definitely, visit with all the private schools, and allow them to come and take anything that we've deemed of no value, but
Yeah.
I can guarantee you that if we're saying it's no value, well, they don't think it's of any value either, but we'll definitely reach out, and as well as anybody in the community, that wants to get them, and then whatever they don't take within a certain amount of period, 2 weeks or so, then we'll ask, all that to come forward.
Thank you.
So do we wanna vote on this, or do we wanna table it to another meeting?
Vote with his
Let's vote on it because,
2 week.
vote on it with the
Vote on
amendment
it and let them,
get the space.
you wanna vote on it?
Oh, yeah, we're supposed to vote on it, yeah.
Well, yeah, but it could be tabled too.
Yeah, okay.
We can vote
Just
on it
vote
with
on
the
it.
stipulation that Dr.
Okay,
Rios will
the
reach
recommendation,
out.
With that stated,
To move on.
Please.
forward.
yes.
it is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Books for Africa to be disposed of before we contact the private schools to make sure that there is no books of value there for them.
Is it correct the way you wanted revised?
Well, there was one word there that makes it different.
Yeah.
But, it's a recommendation of the administration that you approve the Books for Africa to be disposed of in accordance with board policy, and prior to the disposal, that we contact the private schools in the community as well as the general public to make sure that they select any material that they deem appropriate before we dispose of the remaining books and resources.
It's a little different,
That
yeah,
is
I think that's what
very
the board,
Now, let me ask one question, just a clarification. You said private schools?
And community.
Now, I don't hear any complaints from the charter schools out there.
Well, and
They had dibs for the books either.
and
So I don't know how we handle that situation.
and he also said the general public.
And I'll include them as well,
Okay.
Dr.
So,
Keith.
no, we'll come back to it on us after that.
okay, we understand the recommendation as modified.
Yes.
I move.
Is there, Ms. Lozano has motion, Mr. Mesa has second, all in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. Nothing under agenda item 12, agenda item 13, business and finance consideration to approve royalty licensing agreement with Pell Industries and to initiate a partnership with Walmart. Ms. Johnson is,
Yes, good evening, Mr. Garabedian, Dr. Rios, and board members. We have an opportunity from Pell Industries, working through our local retail Walmart, for them to sell specific wearing apparel with our school name and our logo on it. And we're talking about T-shirts, shorts, warm-up jackets or warm-up shirts and warm-up pants. Pell Industries will donate 8% of the net sales price to the school district, and Walmart is on board with this. They're excited about selling these apparel items and feel that it will foster community pride. So our report to you tonight is for your consideration to approve the royalty licensing agreement with Pell Industries through Walmart.
Are there questions on this item? It's non-exclusive, that's
It's
very, yeah, it's a very key
non-exclusive, and we
point
can-
of this agreement, it's
we can,
non-exclusive.
terminate the contract at any time. In some communities that have Kmart and Target and Walmart, this is done in all three retails, but since Del Rio only has Walmart, but if there were other, retail stores that wanted to do that through Pell Industries, they could.
There's a question from Ms. Lozano.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, HEB has been very generous to the district for many years. This does not in any way preclude them or prevent them from participating with Pell also, correct?
No.
I just wanted to make sure.
As a
Because
matter
they sell Del Rio
That
rim
would be
stuff all the
between
time.
them and Pell Industries.
So does Pell reach out to them, or does?
I
HEB
don't
have to?
think so. I think Pell has only reached out to the large retail industries that they do nationwide, and that would be with Walmart.
Yes,
But if I may, HEB does already sell,
right.
product, and the only difference is that HEB doesn't donate 8% of their profits.
Correct.
But very respectfully, HEB donates a whole lot of other stuff, so we're not concerned with them, keeping all the profit, but we are appreciative of this industry that's just gonna make a donation to our general fund, Connie?
Yes, sir.
Not for the superintendent's account or anything like that, it's gonna be transparent,
Superintendent's account.
or the athletic department.
For the board's account.
Coach Smith in the back.
Okay. Any other questions? I think it's pretty clear, we're probably ready to vote. Okay. Yeah, it is, that's a good point, Ms. Lozano, for those who didn't hear, a lot of schools do it, and it's not exclusive, that's the other thing.
Well, it's not inclusive, and also, our logos are not copyrighted.
Right.
So, anybody that wanted to could
Could
do
do it.
this, but with Pell Industries and through Walmart, we will be getting a 8%, which is a good thing.
Can't beat that.
Okay, the recommendation?
It's the recommendation of the district to approve the royalty licensing agreement with Pell Industries and to initiate a partnership with Walmart.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept?
Also
Mr.
moved.
Chavilla's motion, Ms. Lozano a second, all in favor by a show of hands. Unanimous, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 14, Human Resources and Student Services. A, consideration to convert the administrative intern position at Garfield Elementary to an assistant principal position. Funding source 199 local. Dr. Patty McNamara presenting.
Mr. Garabedian and members of the board and Dr. Rios, it is the recommendation of the administration that the administrative intern position at Garfield Elementary be converted to an assistant principal position this evening. This would be continuing, the funding source would be 199, which is our local funding source. It's a change in title. There's no change in the funding source. It will remain 199.
Question?
Dr. Rios, do you
Is there,
you have
Just wanna clarify something.
clarification?
are there questions?
So right now, we have no assistant principal at Garfield?
We have a principal and assistant principal, and this is their second assistant principal. And in the
Okay,
past,
so
we've
convert
had an
intern
intern.
to that two APs.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir. Due to the size of the
Right.
campus.
okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Clarification?
The only clarification that I would add, especially because I see my two principals of the two largest elementary schools sitting back there, and one of them's happy and the other one isn't. We have two large elementary schools that definitely would merit an additional assistant principal. The reason that we're providing an assistant principal to Garfield before we do one to Buena Vista is because of the population at Garfield necessitates a tremendous amount of paperwork, above and beyond anything that Buena Vista does. They still have both large numbers of students. But very respectfully, the administrative duties at Garfield are more excessive than they are at Buena Vista in comparison to the other campuses because of our bilingual population and everything that we have to do with them. And it isn't anything different than what we've done in the past. Garfield has always had, at least in my history here, they've always had a principal, an assistant principal, and an intern. Buena Vista hasn't. Buena Vista's had a principal and an assistant principal. Garfield has always had the intern. We just want to make it permanent, and really the plan was all year long to convert that interim position to a permanent principal so that there's some consistency, and that's what all we're doing today. We're not really adding any more personnel than we've had there in the past. We're just making it permanent. And rather than just pass it through the board, in the budget process, we just want to say exactly what we're doing.
Questions?
I have one more question.
Dr. Keyes?
If we delete this administrative intern position, will we have any available at any campus? Administrative intern positions? Or is that only in Garfield?
No, it was only a couple.
Okay, so in the future, if we need one, we can approve it. Okay. We'll make sure that pops up, we need more down the pipeline.
Dr. Keys, if might we add, we have that stipend, on our approved stipend list.
Right.
So, but we already have it on the approved stipend list for an intern.
Good, thank you.
And they're on a teacher matrix with a $5,000 stipend.
Other questions? Ms. Haynes, did you have a question, or no? Okay. All right, the recommendation.
Okay. It is a recommendation of the administration that the administrative intern position at Garfield Elementary be converted to an assistant principal position, and be approved as presented this evening.
For the recommendation, is there a motion to accept? Mr. Mesa has motion, Mr. Chavita has second. All in favor by a show of hands? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Thank you.
Unanimous, motion carries. Thank you. There's nothing under agenda item 15, technology services, so that brings us to 16, closed session. It's now 8:56 p.m., August 18th, 2014, and the Board of Trustees will recess this open session and convene a closed meeting in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. We're able to do that under Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.076, 551.082, 551.084. Specifically, tonight, A, pursuant to 551.074, discussion of personnel to hear complaints against personnel. First item being discussion of personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. And 2, discussion of salary adjustments to include the following: justification, service credit, master's degree. All final votes, actions, or decisions will be taken in open session. We're now in closed session. Okay, it's now 9:41 p.m., August 18th, 2014, and the Board of Trustees will now reconvene in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Subchapter D and E. No action was taken in closed session. That brings us to agenda item 17. We are now reconvened to open session. First item is A, consideration to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. Dr. McNamara?
Mr. Garabedian and members of the board and Dr. Rios, the administration proudly recommends the following new hires: Mr. Adrian Martinez, social studies teacher, Del Rio Middle School; Ms. Rosalinda Sanchez, career investigations portal teacher at Del Rio Middle School; Gloria A. Trevino, special ed co-ed teacher at Del Rio High School; Mr. Eliseo Rodriguez, speech language pathologist assistant for the district; as well as assistant principal at Del Rio Middle School, Ms. Cynthia Saun. At Del Rio High School, assistant principal, Mr. Jose Rodriguez. Student Guidance and Learning Center, assistant principal, Mr. Rick Maldonado. And Del Rio Middle School, assistant principal, Mr. Ricardo Pettis. That concludes our recommendations for this evening.
Okay, we've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to accept? Mr. Overfelt has motioned. Is there a second? Mr. Mesa has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries. And just for clarification, agenda item 17B, there was nothing that materialized for this meeting, so there's nothing to report or to vote on. That brings us to agenda item 18, superintendent's report, Buena Vista Gymnasium ribbon cutting ceremony. Dr. Rios.
Just as agreed, the ribbon cutting ceremony for the Buena Vista Gym will be Monday the 25th. We will let everybody know via the update Friday, as well as a personal phone call from one of us as to the time. Tentatively, the two options are 10 in the morning or 11:30, and we will finalize that here in the next day or so, and we'll let everybody know. That's it, Mr. President.
Okay. All right, that brings us to agenda item 19. Being no further business before this board, is there a motion to adjourn? Mr. Overfelt has motion, Ms. Haynes has second. All in favor by a show of hands? Unanimous, motion carries, meeting adjourned.